A fresh new year has begun, and if you're setting new goals for your business, it's extremely difficult to reach them without the right people on your team. And ZipRecruiter has transformed how you go about finding the right people. ZipRecruiter posts your job to over 100 of the web's leading job boards with just one click. Then ZipRecruiter actively looks for the most qualified candidates and invite them to apply. They even review every application to identify the top candidates, so you never miss a great match. That's why ZipRecruiter is different. Unlike other hiring sites, ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on the right candidates finding you. It finds them. No wonder 80% of employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by businesses of all sizes and industries to find the most qualified job candidates with immediate results. And right now, my listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/Stephen A. That's with a PH, not a V. That's ZipRecruiter.com/Stephen A. One more time to try it for free. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/Stephen A. with a PH, not a V.
This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Let me tell y'all something right now. What a game. What a game. Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do every weekday over the airwaves of ESPN Radio, 250-plus markets across the United States of America, and, of course, Sirius XM ESPN Radio's Channel 80. Number to call up, as always, is 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. It's time for Straight Talk with your boy, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks. No contracts whatsoever. What a game. What a game. Now, I'm not about to sit up here engage in hyperbole and call this better than, let's say, USC versus Texas back in 2005 when Vince Young put on an absolute show, throwing for 267 yards, rushing 19 times for 200 yards. It's absolutely, positively unstoppable on that particular evening, guiding the Texas Longhorns to a national title victory over the USC Trojans with Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart and the rest of the crew. 41-38 in that game. It was absolutely spectacular. But I got to tell you something right now. Last night was special. Last night was special. It was special to be a part of it. It was special to see it. It was special to be there in person at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium and in the ATL, Atlanta, Georgia. Look, the stadium is off the chain. It's special. Arthur Blank did a hell of a job. I mean, that stadium is so fly. I was running across workers that were talking about how they enjoyed working at it at the place, didn't even want to take time off. That's how fly the stadium was. But nothing, and I do mean nothing, usurps what we witnessed last night for this game. First half, everybody was looking at me saying, what's wrong with Stephen A? Because I was sitting in the suite, an ESPN suite, of course, absolutely depressed. I picked Alabama to win this game, 24-20. I thought Alabama would win this game. And the way Jalen Hurts and Alabama's offense looked in the first half, I got to tell y'all, I had damn near given up. I said, Jalen Hurts, God bless him, because the kid's a good kid. He's class personified. His collegiate record was like 25-2, if I remember correctly. But look, man, look, he's an athlete. He can't throw. I don't like him passing the ball. And evidently neither did Nick Saban, because he only allowed him to throw the ball 8 times. He completed 3 passes for 21 yards. Offense was getting absolutely nowhere. Georgia was beating Alabama at its own game because their defense, filled with a bunch of rough riders, was all over Alabama. I forgot Ridley was a wide receiver for the Alabama Crimson Tide, because he was getting no action whatsoever. None. And then Nick Saban, being the great Nick Saban that he is, made some changes, made an adjustment, and all of a sudden, the world stopped. Figuratively speaking, of course, not literally. What I saw last night from Nick Saban himself, it was something special. It'll go down in the annals of sports for many, many years to come. There's no way around this, ladies and gentlemen. when you look at this kid, what is it, Tagovailoa? Tago from Hawaii. This dude comes into the game. He is a true freshman. All he had seen this year was mop-up duty. No real action to speak of. Nick Saban pulls the trigger and puts this young kid in. To start the second half. He benched Jalen Hurts. Benched him. And suddenly, this kid is doing it up. He's running for first downs. He's making completions. He moves them down the field. He throws a touchdown pass to Ridley. And they're climbing within. You know what? I just said to myself, hey, what can you expect? And then even when it was 2020 and they were going to overtime, you got your field goal kicker. He completely panics, goes wide left on a 36-yarder, and you're just saying, you got to be kidding me. I mean, to miss it that badly, this kid would not have been able to show his face on campus. I'm going to be nice right now, even though I got his name in front of me. I ain't going to say it. Because it would have been that hard for him to go to campus had they lost the national title because he had an opportunity to close it out in regulation. He didn't do it. We can point to some of the things that Georgia did wrong a little bit later. We can get into all of that. How Jake Fromm, the ball was taken out of his hands. Last 6 possessions, he only threw the ball 6 times, only completed 2 passes. We could get into all of that. We could get into why Sony Michel didn't get the ball more to run the football. We can get into all of that. We can get into why Kirby Smart suddenly got so conservative, knowing that that's the kind of stuff that might play into Nick Saban's hands, who he was a coordinator for 11 years prior to taking the job at Georgia. We could get into all of that. But one inescapable reality is that last play that was a 41-yard touchdown catch by this kid Smith. And here's the reality of the situation. If you are Georgia, how do you let this kid get behind the defense? How do you allow that to happen? How is that even possible? Tagovailoa? He looks right. And he's playing the safety Dominic Sanders for Georgia. Right in the palm of his hands. He kept look right. And then zips left and drills a 41-yard touchdown pass to Smith. Alabama wins the national title on the very last play of the game. Because it was overtime, of course. And I look at it from that standpoint, and I'm saying, wait a minute. You are Alabama. Your quarterback's a freshman. Najee Harris, he's a freshman. You put him in because Damian Harris and, of course, Scarborough, none of them were getting it done for you in your running game. You had Smith as a freshman in your passing game. You had a left tackle who was a freshman. Nick Saban put all of these boys in, inserted all of them. And ultimately, what happens? This happens. Same Alabama team, they're going to lose some key players. Micah Fitzpatrick, Ronnie Harrison. They're juniors. They're leaving early. We ain't even talking about the seniors. But I got to give credit where credit is due. This was something special to behold. It really, really was. And all I can say to you right now, at this particular moment in time, I'm stunned by what I saw. Stunned by what I saw. I didn't expect Alabama to be able to pull this out because I had lost all faith once Jalen Hurts couldn't do anything. But Nick Saban pulled one out of his hat. And right now, he's the greatest college football coach in history. He's tied Bear Bryant all time with 6 national titles. He's got 5 at Alabama. People are contemplating whether or not he should take an opportunity, take a chance, go pro. I'd say stay. Why bother with the NFL? That would be my philosophy. But then again, I'm not Nick Saban. He might want challenges. $8.1 million in salary might not be enough. Not after watching John Gruden sign for $100 million. even though it's 10 years, which means the salary is only $10 million, even though incentives are purportedly can bump it up to $120 million. Bottom line is, Nick Saban's damn near making that amount of money now. And in complete control, and probably is the secure person in all of sports in terms of job security. Matter of fact, I think it's a legitimate question to ask. Who should be more secure in their job, Nick Saban or Bill Belichick? It would be an interesting situation to entertain. But who knows? Who knows? Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. This is Stephen A. Smith coming at you. Number to call up is 888-729-3776, 888-SAY-ESPN. You could ask the question, did Alabama win it or did Georgia lose it? I asked that question on First Take this morning. Of course, Alabama's the national champion. Of course, they deserve all the credit in the world. Of course, Nick Saban deserves all the credit in the world himself. But I got to tell you something. Georgia had this game. And I think they blew it more than Alabama doing anything. Alabama made key stops. They neutralized who they needed to neutralize when it was time. But you had a cushion. And a freshman came in and picked you apart. And Sony Michel didn't get the ball enough. And Jake Fromm made some pivotal mistakes, which was that interception. And Alabama getting it right back after Tagovailoa ultimately made his mistake with his interception. To get the ball right back, nullified everything, and built the momentum for Alabama even more. Arguably, that was the play of the game. But that's just me. 888-SAY-ESPN is the number to call. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. You are listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio. Back with more on the national championship and your calls in a minute. Don't touch that dial.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. Number to call up, as always, is 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. Tua Tagovailoa. That is how you pronounce Tagovailoa's name. Tua Tagovailoa. That's how he pronounces his name. Tagovailoa. That's how you pronounce his name. Look, we can slice it any way we want to. What a game last night. It was something special. I didn't expect Alabama to be able to come back from that Wiggins, but when Raekwon Davis intercepted Jake Fromm, I knew there was a chance. And lo and behold, we all saw what happened. You're in a cover two, you're Georgia. You've got Malcolm Parrish up against Smith, no bump and running. You didn't do anything to impede him at all. Just let him blow right by you. And then after that, Dominic Sanders, free safety, the strong safety, he was frozen because Tagovailoa kept looking right. Sanders was frozen, and by the time Tagovailoa unleashed and dropped that 41-yard bomb, it was a bullet. It wasn't just some high-flying bomb and all the way up and coming all the way down. He drilled that bad boy. Sanders couldn't recover. Smith catches a touchdown. Rookie that caught 8 passes on the year, or that was his 8th catch of the year. From a rookie quarterback, a freshman quarterback that never played with the game on the line in his entire career, this entire season. Everything was garbage time. I give Nick Saban a lot of credit. I give him more credit than I give anybody because of the multitude of decisions he made in putting in the freshmen that he put in. But I also got to look at Kirby Smart, who I respect, but he got a bit conservative. I got to look at Sony Michel not getting the ball. I got to look at the Jake Fromm foolish mistake with the interception. Not just that, but the sack that he took in overtime, even though they ultimately made the field goal anyway. So that nullified it. But then I also got to take into account the fact that you're Georgia. Why are you playing zone? Why are you playing cover 2? Nobody's supposed to get up top. You're supposed to watch deep routes. Alabama went 4 vertical. Sent 4 guys deep. But it's not all fly patterns. If you're Sanders, you got to know, you got to see that Smith blew by Malcolm Parrish. And you got to cover that. He was a bit too late. And, of course, the Georgia Bulldogs, a national title. 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. To the phones we go. Let's go to Buddy in Tuscaloosa. You're live with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. What's up?
Hi, Stephen A. I wanted to call in. The first thing was you opened the show bragging on Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And this is something...
No. Hold on. What did you say? Hold on, because your mouth is too close to the phone or whatever. I couldn't understand what you were saying. What did you say?
I said you opened the show by bragging on Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And I'll admit it's a really nice stand. It's probably one of the top 10 in the country, but there's some problems. I was there for the FSU game in the upper deck, and there's a point in the upper deck you can't see the video board at all because you're even with the leading edge of it.
Well, you would know that. You would know that. You would know that better than me because I can assure you I wasn't in the upper deck of the stadium. So right. You got me there. Go ahead.
So, like I say, it's nice, but I still think the nicest stadium in the country is AT&T Stadium. I mean, that is a cathedral of football.
Oh, you talk about Jerry Jones' $1 billion playpen with the whole big jumbotron? Without question, there's nothing that beats that. There's nothing that beats that. That's a good point. Go ahead.
But I mean, to the game, I was there in the student section. I mean, the whole place was down at halftime, just about like you said you were. And I had some friends of mine texting me saying, what should we do? What should we do? I said, we've got to put Tua in. I hate it.
Hold it. There were actually folks saying you got to put Tua in?
Yes.
They felt that way about him? Why did y'all feel that way about him since he wasn't seen much this year? Why did you feel that way about him?
Well, I'll say this, the Alabama fan base, I mean, there's been some infighting over whether we should have played Tua some more. Especially going into the Sugar Bowl, there were rumors that he was going to play more. He's played limited in garbage time, but his arm, even in garbage time, I mean, you can go back and watch the film, he has made some incredible throws late in some of these typical cleanup games. But, I mean, some of the games we were playing earlier in the year, we could pull Jalen at, I think there's one point we pulled him in the second quarter against somebody until he had played a ton.
I got you. I got to interrupt you because your signal is not that clear, but I get where you're coming from. But listen, major props to y'all. Y'all know y'all Alabama Crimson Tide because I certainly wasn't thinking about Tua. I was too busy lamenting what I was seeing from Hurts. I got to be honest with you, but thank you for the call. I appreciate that. Let's go to Mike in Massachusetts. You're live with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. What's up, Mike? Talk to me.
What's up, big fella? Big fella, listen, Georgia had him, but Saban made the changes he needed to make. My man came in the game, made a big play, and like they say, big-time players make big-time plays in big-time situations. At the end of the day, they just got out-coached, Stephen. I think that they were out-coached in the second half.
Kirby Smart was out-coached?
I think, yes, I did. I just think Saban made the better decisions in the second half, even though they made mistakes. But at the end of the day, the kid made the big play, and Nick Saban made the adjustments he had to make, and that's how they won that game. Now, I got one other question for you, big fella.
Go ahead.
How could I get a hold of you for a speaking engagement for the kids? Can I talk to your producer?
Talk to my producer, get the information, and I'll convey it to my people, and we'll go from there.
And I just want to hear you. I appreciate you, and I'm going to hold on and speak to your guy. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it. 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. More of your phone calls in a minute. We're talking national championship right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio.
Guess what? You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it! Must be going blind. ESPN Radio. Presented by Progressive Insurance. Drivers who switch to Progressive can save an average of $620. Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show right here on ESPN Radio. My honor and privilege always to have my next guest on the line. He is not only the mouth of the South, but one of the preeminent football analysts in America. The great Paul Finebaum is on the show with us right now. What's going on, Paul? How are you, sir? How's everything?
Stephen, doing great, and it was incredibly great to see you and Atlanta last night at the championship game.
Man, it was something special. It's been a long time since I've been a part of a thriller like that. No question about it. How shocked were you that it came down to what it came down to a freshman quarterback throwing a touchdown pass for Nick Saban to win a national championship?
I mean, I was gobsmacked by it, Stephen. I knew he would possibly get in. I mean, the rumor in New Orleans was that there was a package, but it's one thing to run a package. It's another thing to just basically tell your quarterback, who has led you to 2 national championship games, hey, thanks, buddy, but go to the end of the bench. And it was certainly a move that we've seen a little bit of from Nick Saban in the past with the onside kick. But I mean, it's one thing trying a desperation onside kick. It's another thing replacing your quarterback who's 26-2. And even though he hadn't had a lot of success, I mean, that game was not over yet. It wasn't 24-0. It was a 10 or 13 point differential at that point in time. 13-point differential.
Paul, I don't know of anybody who knows more about SEC football than you. This kid, Tua, what is it, Tua Tagovailoa? I mean, how much had you?
I think it's Tagovailoa, but
that's how he pronounced it. I saw it on videos. Tagovailoa. That's how he pronounces his name. But I must ask you, how much had you heard about him prior to last night's game?
I first heard about him from Lane Kiffin about a year ago when he said, listen, as good as Jalen is, I think I just got a better guy from Hawaii. And he mentioned Tua's name, of which I couldn't pronounce. And, but you hear that, and then you didn't hear. But really in New Orleans, I knew he was there, and we knew he was pretty good. But in New Orleans, Steve and I kept hearing more and more about him. And even before the game last night, I was hearing from friends of mine who are close to that program that maybe he would take over next year. But next year and this year are 2 different things. And it's worth remembering on the other side of the field. You had Jake Fromm, who came in and replaced Jacob Eason, who was the starter last year and this year. Got hurt in the first game, never got his job back. So I mean, there's some precedent, but not just getting yanked. And Nick Saban can be stubborn sometimes. He'll stick with someone way beyond when he probably should have. So that just made. I mean, he knew he had to shake it up, Stephen. I mean, you were there, you were on the field. There was no energy, there was no vibe. Alabama was going down.
Paul Finebaum right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. Paul, I'm watching this game unfold, and they're down 13-0 at halftime. And the thing that resonated with me outside of the ineffectiveness of Jalen Hurts was the fact that Nick Saban was going up against a nemesis, or rather, a friend who was now his nemesis in Kirby Smart. And I said, this is one of the rare moments I'm seeing somebody beat Alabama at its own game. I had lost faith. What about you at that particular juncture?
No, I did too. I felt the same way. And, I mean, he was just that game wasn't really close. I mean, a 13-point differential was the minimum amount because Georgia was not converting. I mean, they were kicking field goals when they could have been getting touchdowns. And what was really remarkable was, how many third and longs did Jake Fromm just throw a dart for a first down, and one of those times a touchdown. So, there was very little hope. It looked like Saban had finally met his match, and then you start to let your mind wonder, not that Saban was ending it, but is this how Nick Saban wants to go out, with 5 championships, getting schooled by one of his own pupils? I had a lot of things going through my mind at that deficit, Stephen A.
I got to tell you, and as I'm looking at it now, and as we dissect Georgia's role in all of this, how big of a role do you believe they played in their own demise? Because I thought Sony Michel should have gotten the ball more. I thought that Jake Fromm should have been throwing the football a little bit more. The combination of both is something that I thought should have been happening, and I thought they played just as significant a role in beating themselves as allowing Alabama to beat them. What did you say to that?
Yeah, I think that's exactly correct. I don't know why teams do this, but maybe you're thinking, Alabama's not doing anything offensively and defensively they're struggling. Let's just kind of start running the clock out. It reminded me a little bit of another Georgia team, Atlanta, last year in the Super Bowl. And not to get off on a Georgia story, but I mean the heartbreak of both the Falcons and Georgia is really palpable. But yeah, there were two series that I thought Jim Chaney, the offensive coordinator at Georgia, just absolutely burned without getting anything out of them, and that's where Alabama started to change the direction. They walked into a couple of good plays. They were able to change and turn the field. And even when they were creeping back, it still didn't seem like it was possible. And then Georgia started self-destructing. And then Stephen A., you get to the end of the game, you got a chip shot field goal, and the guy shanks it. I mean, the two of us could have taken turns out there, and we could have been closer than him.
I totally agree with you there. He might be the luckiest man of them all because he gets to show his face on campus after missing that 36-yard field goal. No question about it. Paul Finebaum right here with Stephen A. Before I let you get on out of here, we got to talk about the legacy of Nick Saban for just a second. He's got 6 titles. He's tied with the all-time great, Bear Bryant, but not at Alabama. He's got 6 rings overall, 5 at the University of Alabama. What should Nick Saban do from here if you're Paul, in the opinion of Paul Finebaum? Should he hang it up and go to the pros? Should he stay at Alabama? What should he do?
I know what I would do. I would hang it up because Stephen A., listen, you've covered all the greatest sporting events of all time. How many really great farewells have you seen? Just think if Michael had let it go with the final shot in the NBA Finals. Other players as well. And, what if he comes back and wins next year? Stephen A., listen, this is my sport. I love it. But it's not going to be that big a deal. Okay, he's won 7. At some point, you just have to look at it and go, do I want to do something else? Age is not the overriding factor, but 66 is still an interesting number. I still think there's something in him with the NFL. Maybe not as a coach, maybe as a GM, maybe as a partial owner. I don't know. Television to me, that doesn't make a lot of sense. We all know we all work with guys who used to coach. They're in television just biding their time or just something to do to stay out of their wife's hair. That's not Nick Saban. He's an entrepreneur. Nick Saban could run a Fortune 500 company. Maybe somebody would consider that. If he did at Alabama, if he did at IBM or GE, what he's doing at Alabama, he'd make $100 million a year.
But what about the temperament of Nick Saban? He loves the action. He loves, even though he tries to pretend like it doesn't matter. We all know you get, the roar of that crowd is very, very intoxicating. But I brought it up on First Take with you this morning, the temperament of a Nick Saban. He does things his way. He's unapologetic about it, and he can be incredibly intimidating, particularly the local reporters. Covering University of Alabama, that's different. But in the pros, he's not going to get that kind of latitude. He's not going to have that kind of prowess, per se, with the media at large. What do you make of all of that?
No, you're right. And listen, I covered him early on in his career at Alabama, and I would hear from him from time to time, and the media drove him crazy. And I'm telling you, Stephen A., as of today, if a negative article came out, he would pay attention to it. That's just who he is. He's a perfectionist, and he doesn't like criticism. You remember a year and a half ago at the SEC Media Days, I challenged him on a player. Why didn't he suspend him? And he literally took my head off on national television because he did not like to be questioned. That was not long ago. That was after a national championship. So you're right. I completely agree. At Alabama, he controls every aspect. He's the most important person in his sport. Nobody is going to cross him. And nobody's going to tell him anything because, he is the fuel that runs not only college football, he's the most important person in his conference and easily the most important and influential person in the sport.
My last question to you, who's the biggest threat to Alabama not capturing title number 7 for Nick Saban next year?
I would probably go with Clemson. Because they are going to have they're losing some of the defensive linemen who were just flat out money, but Kelly Bryant has another year, and I don't see anyone in the ACC that will challenge them. Obviously, Georgia is going to be around. One of these days, I think Ohio State's going to not blow a big game. They have recruited on a fairly similar level to Alabama. Those sound pretty boring, but that's where I would go.
Paul Finebaum, thanks again for the great work you did all year long, man. Loved listening to you, loved watching you, and of course, I loved having you as a guest on this show. Thank you so much, buddy. Take it easy.
My pleasure, Stephen. Talk soon.
All right, buddy. The one and only Paul Finebaum right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. 888-729-3776 is always the number to call up. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. Back with your calls and more in a minute. We're talking national championship. Plus, I'll get into a little NBA action that happened last night. Plus, Mr. Stan Van Gundy is making news. He has a problem with ESPN as well. We'll talk about all that and then some in a minute. Stick around. Don't touch that dial. You're listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio.
Guess what? You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it!
Hour number 2, I'll get into some NFL playoff action, get into what happened with LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers last night, get into why I am very, very proud of LeBron James on this particular day. I'll tell y'all why in hour number 2. Plus, I'll touch on these NBA coaches apparently engaging in an all-out assault against ESPN. These are all things that I'll talk about at the start of hour number 2. Stick around. Don't touch that dial. Let's get back to the phone calls at 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. Let's go to Terry in Atlanta. You're live with Stephen A. What's up, Terry?
Hey, Stephen A., what's up, man? I just want to give props to that backup. He was amazing. I could tell the way he was, throwing some of those shorter passes, leading the receivers.
Hey. Tua, what is it? Tungo Vailoa. Tungo Vailoa. There we go. Tua Tungo Vailoa. There we go. Go ahead.
I mean, he showed no fear. He brought it. My thing was some of the no calls. I felt like they were trying to let Bama back in it, man. You had that one play in which it started out as a face mask, ended in a horse collar, no call. Yep. You had a mushed the quarterback.
The mush definitely should have been a penalty.
In front of everybody, like the world.
Classless, absolutely.
You had a perfectly timed block punt that was called offsides. I mean, it was questionable to some degree, but I felt like he just timed him perfect. And then that interception, that probably could have went either way. But I just felt like, some of the look the other way, no calls or lack of consistency on both sides. I mean, yeah, you did have Georgia a couple of times. They got too excited and they could have got called for over celebrating, running onto the field or whatnot. But I just felt like they would, it was, you could see it like, oh man, here we go. Here we go. We're not getting anything. They're trying to get them back in it.
Yeah. I don't disagree with anything you said, Terry. I don't disagree with anything you said, but it does come apart with championship. I mean, there isn't a championship game where you don't see those kind of things happen. Missed calls take place. You see people, trying, sort of giving you the impression they want to help somebody get back in it. Let's not allow this to be a blowout. Let's have a thriller if we can facilitate it. You get those impressions sometimes. There's no doubt about that, but that comes with it. That comes with the territory. It's happened all the time. There's no denying that. Appreciate the call, though. Billy in South Carolina, you're live with Stephen A. Go ahead.
Hey, Stephen A. How you doing?
I'm all right. Go ahead.
First of all, thanks for taking my call. I got a quick comment and a question. I'll hang up and listen.
Hurry up. Go ahead.
The question is, with Nick Saban, would you compare him to Bill Belichick as far as coaching? And my comment is, yesterday I heard you on the radio, and I'm a Laker fan. I've been one since I was born. And the comment I want to make is, as long as the law for him to say the comments that he made, he's the same guy that said that stealing wasn't a big deal. So I'll hang up and listen later.
You said Lonzo. That would be LaVar the father. That's not Lonzo, the player for the Los Angeles Lakers. He never said it was no big deal. His father said that. Okay? So that's it. I'll comment on LaVar Ball in hour number 2. Don't you worry about that. But in terms of your question about Saban being comparable to Bill Belichick, of course it is. He's a protege of Bill Belichick's. Some of the things he's learned is from Bill Belichick. He's got a defensive background like Bill Belichick. He's a former assistant to Bill Belichick. And now he's a successful collegiate football coach in part because of what he's learned from Bill Belichick. So, of course, it's comparable, no doubt. Let's go to Thomas in Kentucky. You're live with Stephen A. Go ahead, Thomas.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm all right. Real quick. Go ahead, buddy.
I just wanted to get your opinion on Jalen Hurts, and if you were him, would you look at transferring before spring ball? Would you go into spring ball?
Depends on what I want to do. If I want to be a quarterback, if I were Jalen Hurts, I'd transfer because I wouldn't allow him to be the quarterback of Alabama again. Not after what I saw from him last night in that first half compared to what I saw from Tungo Vailoa in the second half. I would not do it. But if Jalen Hurts decides that he wants to be a running back, there are things that Nick Saban and his coaching staff can do with Jalen Hurts as a runner. And Tungo Vailoa, you could do with him as your quarterback. There are things that you could do. So I would entertain that. That's where I would go with it. Thomas, I appreciate the call. Thank you so much. 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. Hour number 2 up next. We'll get into coaches on the attack against ESPN. NBA coaches, to be exact, on the attack against ESPN. LeBron James on the attack for a different, far more justifiable reason. And, of course, some NFL action. Stick around. Don't touch that dial. Hour number 2 with Stephen A. up next.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
A fresh new year has begun, and if you're setting new goals for your business, it's extremely difficult to reach them without the right people on your team. And ZipRecruiter has transformed how you go about finding the right people. ZipRecruiter posts your job to over 100 of the web's leading job boards with just one click. Then ZipRecruiter actively looks for the most qualified candidates and invite them to apply. They even review every application to identify the top candidates, so you never miss a great match. That's why ZipRecruiter is different. Unlike other hiring sites, ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on the right candidates finding you. It finds them. No wonder 80% of employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by businesses of all sizes and industries to find the most qualified job candidates with immediate results. And right now, my listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/Stephen A. That's with a PH, not a V. That's ZipRecruiter.com/Stephen A. One more time to try it for free. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/Stephen A. with a PH, not a V.
This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A. Welcome to hour number 2. For the Stephen A. Smith Show right here on ESPN Radio, coming at you, as I love to do, every weekday over the airwaves of ESPN Radio. 250-plus markets across the United States of America. And, of course, Sirius XM, ESPN Radio, Channel 80. Number to call up, as always, is 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. Once again, that's 888-SAY-ESPN. The Stephen A. Smith Show. Hour number 2 being brought to you by Pennzoil Synthetics. Taking synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level. Make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today. You know, a story like this, as it pertains to the NBA and recent comments by Rick Carlisle, coach of the Dallas Mavericks, president of the National Basketball Coaches Association. It's a touchy subject because Rick Carlisle is a championship coach. He's a damn good coach. Even though Stan Van Gundy is devoid of a championship, there is no denying that he's an exceptional coach. I appreciate the candor of both. I've spoken to Rick Carlisle about this subject in regards to LaVar Ball and his verbiage and his incendiary verbiage towards Luke Walton, coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. Stan Van Gundy is in on it now. He's aimed his ire at ESPN. Rick Carlisle called out ESPN while calling out LaVar Ball as well, calling an article by Jeff Goodman and who was with the Balls in Lithuania a disgrace and one that erodes trust. Because Rick Carlisle and the Coaches Association were pointing to the relationship that they have with ESPN, and evidently they have a problem with the fact that Jeff Goodman and ESPN printed this article quoting LaVar Ball, going off about Luke Walton, how he's too young and he can't coach this team, which is the Los Angeles Lakers. This is why they were in the midst of a 9-game losing streak before the Lakers won a game the other night. I know Rick Carlisle. I don't know Stan Van Gundy that well. I know that I respect him. I know that his brother does an outstanding job here at this network. I know that we're honored to have Jeff Van Gundy. And when Stan Van Gundy was doing some work for ESPN, we were honored to have him. I like Stan Van Gundy. I really do. I love his candor and his honesty. But as I said about Rick Carlisle yesterday, it doesn't make them right all the time. Stan Van Gundy, after Rick Carlisle went off about ESPN, saying the story failed to provide quotes or perspectives from any players or from Lakers management, either named or unnamed, verifying the claims made in the story. The article lacks any of the basic fundamental benchmarks and standards of reliable journalism. This is according to Rick Carlisle and the National Basketball Coaches Association, essentially relegating it to ambulance chasing. I disagreed with Rick Carlisle. I disagree with Stan Van Gundy. What did Stan Van Gundy have to say? Listen to him yourself. Take it away, y'all.
I just thought it was a cheap shot, and I thought ESPN showed total disrespect. I don't have a problem with LaVar Ball. I don't. He's a grown man. He can voice whatever opinion he wants. I got a problem with ESPN deciding that that's a story.
With all due respect, I think what Stan Van Gundy just said is utterly ridiculous. It is a story. If you don't have a problem with LaVar Ball, you certainly can't have a problem with ESPN. At least Rick Carlisle had the decency to I shouldn't say decency because it's not like Stan Van Gundy was indecent in any way. So a better word would say at least Rick Carlisle highlighted how he had a problem with LaVar Ball every bit as much as he had a problem with ESPN. But I'll say about Stan Van Gundy's comments the same thing I said about Rick Carlisle in the National Basketball Coaches Association statement. LaVar Ball is the father of the number 2 overall pick, who is a point guard for the Los Angeles Lakers. LaVar Ball, obnoxious, loquacious, classless, or any other word y'all want to point out towards him because of this statement about Luke Walton, no matter how distasteful it may be, that doesn't make it not newsworthy. LaVar Ball's son is the point guard of the coach he was talking about, who happens to be the coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. That makes it a story. And with all due respect, not to get even remotely political here, but if we're going to quote and lament or laugh at and denigrate a future-to-be commander-in-chief at the time who during the campaign was validating the size of his hands, everything's up for grabs. I would love to sit down with a Stan Van Gundy or Rick Carlisle. I'm not talking about the distastefulness because they're right about that. Rick Carlisle was right about that. Everything he said about LaVar Ball in regards to the quote about Luke Walton was absolutely right. He was wrong. It was beyond the pale. He had no business saying it. He was wrong. But to blame the network for quoting this man is ridiculous. His son is your starting point guard. I think LaVar Ball's comments was a betrayal of Magic Johnson. It was a betrayal of the Los Angeles Lakers. It was even a betrayal of his son. Because it put his son in a bad spot, and it makes you raise your eyebrows and wonder, what is the son going home telling his daddy? And that's not fair to Lonzo. And it's even more egregious that his own father put him in that position. But it's a story. Everybody want to sit up there, stick out their chest. Oh, who is Stan Van Gundy or Rick Carlisle or tell ESPN? Stop that. We don't have to get into all of that. They can say what they want. They can feel how they want. All I'm saying is that it is clearly a story. That's the only premise I'm arguing. It is clearly a story. If LaVar Ball comes out and says, I don't want my son on the Lakers, Magic Johnson doesn't know what he's doing, we're not supposed to print that? We're not supposed to report that that's what he said? The man didn't say it anonymously. He said it. You don't quote him? Come on now. Come on. 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. That's one thing that I want to talk about. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was LeBron James and him speaking out about H&M. H&M clothing had an advertisement out. And to be completely honest, to be completely transparent, I can't applaud LeBron James enough for weighing in the way that he did on an ad that can only be described as tone deaf. It was an article for H&M featuring a young black male model wearing a hoodie, and the inscription on the hoodie read, "Coolest monkey in the jungle." That's what it said. LeBron James spoke out about it on his Instagram post. He put a crown on the kid's head. It said King of the World. And then LeBron James wrote, quote, "H&M, you got us all wrong. And we ain't going for it. Straight up. Enough about y'all and more of what I see when I look at this photo. I see a young king, the ruler of the world, an untouchable force that can never be denied. We as African Americans will always have to break barriers, prove people wrong, and work even harder to prove we belong. But guess what? That's what we love, because the benefits at the end of the road are so beautiful. Hashtag live, laugh, love. With a heart symbol. Hashtag love my people. Couldn't said it better myself. LeBron James is absolutely right. Snoop Dogg was absolutely right. H&M crossed the line with this particular advertisement, with this particular promo. Now, who in God's name in the year 2017 doesn't know that that's offensive? H&M should be ashamed of itself. And I applaud LeBron James for calling it out like that. He is the preeminent iconic figure, arguably in the world of sports, clearly in the basketball world. He may not be the king because he's not the champion. That would be Kevin Durant and the Golden State Warriors. But when he takes positions like this, it shows why he is worthy of being perceived as somebody having a crown. Because there was big of LeBron James to point that out. It was the right thing to do. And I want to state for the record, I stand with him 1,000%. That was a highly offensive promo, a highly offensive advertisement. And H&M should know better. Plain and simple. I'm not going to go any further than that. But that says it all. A little kid, little black kid at that, wearing a hoodie, coolest monkey in the jungle, and you think that's cool? Inexcusable. Absolutely, positively inexcusable. Props to LeBron James, Snoop Dogg, and others who have spoken out against this. Consider me right there with them. 888-SAY-ESPN is the number to call up. That's 888-729-3776. Back to your calls and more in a minute. You are listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio.
Craving even more of Stephen A?
Him of all people!
For around-the-clock access to the man?
I'm Stephen A.
You can follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Stephen A. Smith and on Facebook at Stephen A. You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I want to piggyback off of what I was saying about LeBron James speaking out because listen, the Stephen A. Smith Show just went in 250-plus markets nationwide across the United States of America. In no time, it'll probably be over 300. I'm greedy, y'all. I'm not interested in monolithic appeal from one particular community, in my case, the African-American community. I'm interested in mass appeal. I like everybody listening. I like everybody watching. The more, the merrier. And for me, the issue is fairness and it's understanding. You know, I want to say something that I've never said on air before, but I've said off the air on many, many occasions to many people. I'm not somebody that believes that because somebody may have been insensitive, racially or otherwise, that makes you a racist or anything like that. I'm not built that way. I'm not that kind of guy. There are some people out there, and the word ignorant isn't always negative. There are some people out there that are simply ignorant and oblivious to what may be offensive to a particular community. That's why I try to be as fair and as understanding as I possibly can. There are white folks out there that do things that would come across as racially insensitive to an African American, and they had absolutely no clue that they were remotely offensive. There are things that happen in various communities throughout our country where folks from a particular cultural group just didn't know, or you just didn't know you were offensive to them. I communicate with folks from the Jewish community every day. There are certain things that I absolutely definitively know would come across as offensive, and I do everything that I can to avoid it. My question is, what if I made a mistake and I was offensive one day and had no idea? Would I not want them to tell me so I could make sure I didn't repeat those mistakes? Absolutely. The Latino community, the Asian American community, and beyond, we don't know. Even in the Native American community, you have some people who find the Redskins name highly offensive. The tomahawk chop, highly offensive. Whether it's Braves or Florida State Seminoles or whatever, highly offensive. Kansas City Chiefs, highly offensive. Others from the Native American community say, well, no, we're not offended. We just don't know. But when you do know, and when you're told, and you do it anyway, we got a problem. When we talk about H&M, what person doesn't know in this world that associating a black person with a monkey is not offensive? How could you possibly not know that? How could you possibly not know that? There's no way. That's why it's problematic. And that's why it needed to be said. I'm fair-minded. Black folks offend other folks, I'm going to sit up there and say, look, you were wrong. But as a black man, there's something that's so flagrantly offensive, I have an obligation to speak out. And I will never hesitate to do so. Not if I believe that to be the case. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. We're going to talk some NFL playoffs because we got some NFL playoff games coming up. We're going to talk about Nick Saban and whether or not he should go pro or stay at Alabama. We can talk about last night's championship game. We could also talk about the way that LeBron James, for all the good that he did by speaking out on his Instagram account against that insensitive act by H&M with their promo with the little black kid. We could also highlight the fact that LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers stuck up the joint last night. Minnesota blew them out the building. And if they continue to look that way, in any capacity, they got no shot at winning a world championship, an NBA championship. Just no shot whatsoever. By the way, I'm down here in the ATL because I was here last night for the national championship game. Once upon a time, the Atlanta Hawks looked to be relevant. You know why the Hawks ain't relevant now? Because Budenholzer can coach. And because he can coach, and he's proven he could coach, and they had a couple of years of success, they said, you know what? It appears they said, you know what? We can afford to take folks for granted. Clean house, curb spending, let's totally rebuild. Evidently, the city of Philadelphia isn't the only organization engaging in the process. Now it appears to be the Atlanta Hawks. Let's see how that works out for them. Back to the phones we go. Jonathan in Georgia, you're live with Stephen A. Talk to me.
Just want to talk about my opinion about LeBron James and the Cavs and why he is the double-edged sword of that city and that organization. You can't argue his greatness. The only thing subjective about his greatness is where you would rank him among the all-time greats, but he's there. But what LeBron James demands, Stephen A. Smith, is a win-now product, and you can't argue with that because he is one of the greatest, and he's in a position to win championships every year when you have them. The downside
Stop right there. Educate me. What was I arguing about with LeBron James? When you say I can't argue with it, what do you mean? Well, who's trying to argue with that?
I just wanted your perspective on this. I just want to say he's a double-edged sword to where because he demands winning right now, Cleveland does not have the opportunity to build for the future because he's not interested in draft picks. He's not interested in building. So the problem is, you're going to win now with LeBron James and you're a contender to win a championship, definitely the Eastern Conference every season. But when and if he decides to leave after his contract expires and go somewhere via free agency, because they were limited winning in the now, they don't have the assets to build for the future. So while he's one of the greatest of all time,
so what's your question?
My question for you is, what do you think about that? Do you think that LeBron James is more of a hindrance in that way than he is a benefit for Cleveland? Because when he's there, they can't build for the future.
All right, I'm going to start calling you Max. You keep going on, Jonathan, because that's a long question. But here's the deal. LeBron James, you can't necessarily fault him because you're always better because of his presence. You're always better because of him. It's unavoidable. But here's where you can throw some shade on the greatness of a LeBron James. Kyrie Irving's only 25, 26 years old. So when you sit there and say they can't necessarily build, the fact is if LeBron left after this season, you still would have had Kyrie. But you alienated him while he was there with LeBron. So if I'm Dan Gilbert or anybody else, what I'm doing is emphasizing to LeBron, we need you to make sure that you ingratiate yourself with cats to the point where even if you decide you want to do something different, we don't have to decimate our franchise because a whole bunch of folks didn't want to stay even while you were here. Not a whole bunch of folks in this case because it was Kyrie Irving, but Kyrie Irving's a bad boy. That's a devastating loss. And I don't know how you get around that. Look at what he's doing in Boston. You realize that Kyrie Irving right now is an MVP candidate? You realize right now if the players were to begin today that the Boston Celtics would be the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference? And that's after Gordon Hayward went down in Game 1 of the NBA season. Think about that. Think about that. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. You're listening live to Stephen A., ESPN Radio.
Guess what?
You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it!
So Rick Carlisle had something to say about ESPN. Understood his point, but just disagree. Stan Van Gundy goes a bit further. No problem with LaVar Ball whatsoever, but he has a problem with ESPN. And, of course, Steve Kerr said something about it, calling it a ratings ploy. Listen to what Steve Kerr, the two-time championship coach for the Golden State Warriors, had to say about LaVar Ball in his comments about Luke Walton.
I've talked to people in the media this year. I said, why do you guys have to cover that guy? They say, well, we don't want to. Nobody wants to. But our bosses tell us we have to because of the ratings, because of the readership. So somewhere, I guess it's in Lithuania, LaVar Ball is laughing at all of us. People are eating out of his hands for no apparent reason, other than, he's become like the Kardashian of the NBA or something, and that sells.
I find nothing disrespectful about what Steve Kerr said as a perspective. I'm on the record. I don't think this company should have went over to Lithuania to cover LaVar Ball. Neither of your sons have even proven they could play Division I basketball. And we don't know how successful or how unsuccessful the big baller brand is. One could argue the only reason they're relevant is because Lonzo Ball is playing for the Los Angeles Lakers. So I don't find fault with what Steve Kerr said in that regard. But I'll read this tweet from Frank Isola of the New York Daily News, my buddy, who does an outstanding job and has done an outstanding job covering the Knicks for many, many years in New York City. Listen to what he wrote in this tweet. Steve Kerr and Stan Van Gundy have used their platforms to lecture us on politics. That's great. Yet they're not okay with the father of an NBA player having a platform to talk about his son's team. Question mark. Parentheses. Not an endorsement of obnoxious LaVar, but how is it different? Question mark. Seriously. Frank Isola has a point. Now, I happen to find Steve Kerr a kind, decent, gentle man who's very, very smart and obviously very accomplished. I have no problem listening to him on politics. Greg Popovich served this country honorably. I certainly have no problem listening to his comments on politics. Stan Van Gundy, smart as a whip, incredibly honest and candid, somebody I respect. I have no problem listening to him on politics. But others might. Folks who are political aficionados might. People in that genre might. Constituents of a candidate they did not support might. Did it stop them? And I don't recall any of them speaking in private. They made sure to speak in the microphones and cameras so the world would hear what they had to say. Now, are they comparable to a LaVar Ball? Of course not. Does LaVar Ball come across as classless? Yes. As far as I'm concerned, did he betray Magic Johnson, the Lakers, and even his son? Yes, he did. But he has a right to say what he had to say. And I will stand tall in telling you, you have to quote him in that regard. You have to report that. The man is talking about his son's coach. If LaVar Ball never said a word about Lonzo, but said, I don't want my son playing for the Los Angeles Lakers because I don't think Magic Johnson knows what he's doing, will we have heard from these folks? Why this insatiable appetite to come to the defense of Luke Walton? Why? Luke Walton, I think, is a good young coach. I think he should be given a chance. Magic Johnson and Rob Pelinka didn't hire him. Jim Buss did. Jeannie co-signed. If Luke Walton got fired, is there anybody that can definitively come to his defense? I don't believe he should be fired. I like Luke Walton. I want him to stay on as the Los Angeles Lakers coach. I wish him success. But if Magic Johnson made the call that Luke Walton had to go, should we be protesting in the streets? They have the worst record. They're tied for the worst record in the Western Conference. They're tied for the second worst record in all of basketball. They are a very young team. And that has a lot to do with it. But if Magic Johnson decided he wanted to go in a different direction, could we definitively fault him? So what's the uproar all about? LaVar Ball is the father of the starting point guard of the Los Angeles Lakers. As wrong, as classless, and as ridiculous as his comments were in terms of it being beyond the pale and highly inappropriate, that does not mean it's not news. It means he may very well be very distasteful. But it doesn't mean it's not news. And for Stan Van Gundy to sit up there and say he got a problem with ESPN, but no problem with LaVar Ball, makes absolutely no sense. Zero. It's just a thought. It's just a thought. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. Your calls to close out the show in a minute. You're listening live to Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
Guess what?
You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it.
Welcome back to Stephen A. Smith Show, 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. I want to clarify a point because I don't want anybody to misconstrue what I was saying when I brought up Magic Johnson, and had it been Magic Johnson, would the coaches have been saying anything? I'm not pointing to anything racial. I didn't mention Magic Johnson because he was black. I mentioned Magic Johnson because he's the executive who runs the Lakers. I was making the claim that if you're Stan Van Gundy, Rick Carlisle, Steve Kerr, would you be saying this if LaVar Ball had said it about Magic, meaning the executive as opposed to a member of the Coaches Association? That's all I was trying to say. But that doesn't make their point right or wrong. What makes their point wrong is trying to decide and decipher what qualifies as news. They don't make that call. We do. And we make that call based on our viewing, listening, and reading public and the kind of things they gravitate to, whether we like it or not. Of course, there are many journalists that want to have nothing to do with LaVar Ball. I can tell you, I wanted to talk to LaVar Ball after opening night when his son wet the bed. I definitely want to hear from LaVar Ball after all that junk he talked about Lonzo and what he was going to do in his NBA career. Without question. But I don't have any desire to talk to LaVar Ball right now because I think his comments cross the line because you're putting your son in the worst possible spot because you could have people looking at him wondering whether or not he's going home and telling daddy stuff about the coach or other players or anything like that. Magic Johnson's in a pinch, man. Because I think a press conference at some point should be held with Magic Johnson telling LaVar Ball, it's time to pipe down, bro. Ain't none of these private conversations you and I gonna have anymore. I'm gonna tell you to your face, you need to chill out. That might be necessary. It just might be. Only got a few minutes left, but my man Carlton in Tampa, you're live with Stephen A. Go ahead, buddy.
Hey, I want to talk about the national championship game last night, but quickly, before that, go onto the ESPN website, go hit NBA. Like 8 out of the 12 stories that come up under NBA are about the Ball family, and they're not just about the reaction of the Lakers or how it's affecting the Lakers. It's all about them in Lithuania and other experiences in Lithuania, and you're becoming the E Network for the Ball family, for God's sake. You know, the E Network promoted the Kardashians, and a lot of real sports people are going to have a problem with this. It might be the right move monetarily, Stephen A., if you can get all these viewers that somehow you can monetize watching the Ball family, but a lot of people are sick to death of LaVar Ball and his antics.
All right, but let me respond to that real quickly by saying this to you, Carlton. Every time you catch me on First Take, don't you?
Yep.
I didn't mention it today. I mean, you sit up there and you listen to this radio show. We talk about a lot of different things. You look at other shows, PTI and other sports centers and beyond. They're not talking about it. Yes, you might have the website. You might be making a valid point. I haven't looked, but I'm going to trust you because I know you know what the hell you're talking about. And you might have those valid points, but you are a 24/7 network who throws a potpourri of things out there on television, on radio, in print and beyond. And there are many things you do outside of that. So if somebody doesn't want to see it, don't read it or don't watch it. But there are other options that you have literally within the ESPN platform that's not doing that. And that needs to be mentioned as well.
Oh, you said you wouldn't have gone to Lithuania.
Oh,
so
hell no, I wouldn't have.
I would like your voice to be heard a little bit more with because I don't think ESPN wants to turn themselves into the E Network for the Ball family.
I don't think they will. And when you think about some of the preeminent personalities, and with all due respect, you're talking to one of them, it's not something I engage in. Ain't no way in hell they could have got me to go to Lithuania for that story. I promise you that. I wouldn't have gone, but everybody ain't me. But go ahead.
On to the national championship game last night. That game was the best evidence you will ever see in your life how luck plays such an enormous factor in how we view people through history, the most successful people through history. I'm going to call him Tua because I have difficulty pronouncing his name as well. He threw one of the worst interceptions you're ever going to see. Next play, Fromm bounces the ball off the Alabama guy's head, and it comes back to him. He threw another interception in the end zone, but it was juggled and therefore Alabama got a field goal out of that. If the guy picks it off, Alabama doesn't get points. On his second touchdown pass, Stephen A., he wasn't throwing to Ridley. He was throwing to the other guy who was double covered. Ridley cuts across the field and catches the ball. Now, I give that kid immense credit for not crumbling under the situation. After he got sacked for the 16-yard, sack in overtime, he could have completely fallen apart. But he collected himself and he threw a magnificent touchdown pass. But his performance was all over the place, and everything that could have gone right for him, including getting out of 3 guys who had him tackled for a loss on that play, the 3rd and 7 play.
Carlton, we're running out of time, so you only got 30 seconds. Go ahead.
No, but everything that could have happened that could go right for that kid went right for him. So, man, I'm not a religious guy, but maybe I got to look into whatever he believes, because somebody shined a light on him last night.
Oh, by the way, Carlton, if you had a choice, real quick, between Saban and Belichick, who would you want?
Oh, I take Saban in a heartbeat because they haven't proven how he's broken the rules 65 times.
Carlton, I set you up. I had to make myself laugh to end the show. I knew what your answer was going to be. I had to ask you, buddy. I had to ask. I appreciate the call, Carlton. Thanks a lot, buddy. Talk to you tomorrow. Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. Looking forward to talking to you 22 hours from now. We're going to get back into some NFL talk, some NBA talk as well. Congratulations to Alabama, the national champions. Talk to y'all 22 hours. Peace and love.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.